Potatoes, real food, real performance. What are you eating?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff, and we have Adele, who most of you will probably know too, with us today. Hi, Adele.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, everyone.
Hi. So I'm from Total Running Club, and Adele is the founder and manager at Nutrition Track, Malaysian-based dietitian, I suppose is the best way to call it.
Yes.
Good.
Got that.
We're going to be talking today about nutrition and diet and potatoes and how they can help us fuel for success. The theme of today's session is fueling for success. I'm also going to be talking a little bit about training and incorporating nutrition in your training. So we've got a 45-minute session today. Thanks for tuning in. You've got time if you want to quickly share it to your friends or type a little comment to let them know that we're online. We've got some really good stuff for you today, and just going to put up a slide showing you what is the agenda for today. So I'm going to kick things off. I've got some running tips. I've got 6 tips I'm going to give you. I was trying to think of a concise way of communicating what's the most important thing for me. So I've got 2 running tips, training tips. I've got 2 racing tips, and I've got 2 nutrition tips. So I'm going to talk about 6 different topics quickly. Then I'm going to hand over to Adele. She's going to go through a little bit about nutrition in Malaysia and the Malaysian food culture. We're going to tell you a little bit about the potato, a few facts that you may or may not know, and we're going to speak specifically about how potatoes can help your performance. So you might have guessed that Potatoes USA are sponsoring this session today. Thank you for that. And Adele and I and Total Running Club have both been working with Potatoes USA for the last year or so. So this is one of their initiatives, and we hope you'll find that useful. After that, we've got a Q&A. We'll see how much time we've got, but probably about 10 minutes for that, we hope. And we're very happy to answer any of your questions that you have, either relating to running or to nutrition. So you can type in your comments and your questions as we go along. So anything that comes into your mind, just type it in. We've got a team in the background going to list those out, and then we'll try and answer as many of those as we can at the end of the session. And last but not least, we've got a few prizes to give away. We've got some caps, some t-shirts, and some towels. So we're going to package those up. We've got 10 prizes, and we'll announce the winners at the very end. So thanks again for tuning in. And Adele's going to be back in about 15 minutes. I'm going to take over this first section and give you my top 2 tips for each of those topics.
Potatoes, real food, real performance. What are you eating?
Okay, that's our little filler clip. You're going to hear that a few times today. I quite like it. Okay, what have I got for you? Top 2 training tips. So US Potatoes asked me to put a bit of running input into it, not just a nutrition session today. So if I can have the next slide, I'm going to take you into my 2 top training tips. I was trying to think what can be the most useful things I could say that are relevant to all audiences of running. Okay, so this one is not exciting. It's not sexy, but in my view, it's the thing that's going to help your running the most. Running training and any sports training is all about consistency. Okay. There's an analogy that you're building a wall. So over the course of 1 year, 2 years, however many years you're training towards something, or even a few months, you're building that wall patiently with your training. So if you imagine that wall and you remove some bricks from the wall, of course, the wall becomes less stable. So it's therefore important that you hit every single brick. So every training session is a brick in your wall, And it's super important that you have patience, consistency, and structure in your training. So it's not too exciting. You need to know what your target is. You need to know how you're going to get there. And then very simply, you just need to do it. So you've got to be disciplined. You've got to be thorough, and you've just got to get the training done. So that's my first tip. Sorry, it's not more exciting, but you've just got to do the work, and you've just got to do it as often as you schedule it to be done for yourself. Okay, tip number 2. This one's a bit more interesting, I suppose. This has helped me a lot in my training, adding speed into easy runs. So what do we mean by an easy run? Most of our training will be easy running. The sort of general rule of thumb is 70 to 80% of all of your training mileage should be sort of slow, steady mileage. So we're building that base. Then the other 20-30% comprises quality sessions, which might be hills, might be intervals, might be fartlek, might be long run. You might consider that quality as well. So with your easy running, most of your running is going to be easy. It's quite easy to make the mistake of not making that count. So if you do the same route every day, you're going at the same pace, you don't think too much about your easy running. And what I found has helped me a lot in the last 2 years in particular is just adding a little bit of speed into those easy runs. So what you do not want to do is make yourself too tired from the easy runs, because your easy runs are just supporting your overall training, and everything is working towards your hard quality sessions. That's when you want to be fresh. That's when you want to go all in and really push it. So the easy runs, you don't want to go too hard, but there's a few ways you can just get a little bit more out of those easy runs without it taking it out of you physically. Number 1, you can add strides into your easy run. So in the last third of, let's say, a 40-minute easy sort of jog, you push in 5 to 7, 5 to 8 sets of strides. And those are just 50 meters, 70 meters where you accelerate, you focus on your form, and you push the pace a bit faster. You're not sprinting, but you're going at a good pace. So adding some strides into the end of an easy run works well. I like to do that. Well, the other thing you can do is put in a few bursts within the easy run across the way. So if you've got any flat sections, better to do it on flat. You can push like a 500 meters at a pretty decent pace, and then revert back to your easy running pace. So don't do it on every easy run, but if you do it in about 50% of your easy runs, it's a great way of just getting the legs moving a bit quicker, just squeezing a little bit more out of your training. So that's my 2 top training tips: consistency and adding some speed into your easy runs. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about racing. So it's been a while. None of us have raced in a very long time. Hopefully we'll be back to it some point soon. So let's try and remember what we do when we race. So I've got 2 tips for you about how to get the best out of yourself when you're racing. First up, let's check my notes here. Yeah, warming up. So it's a pretty obvious point, but actually a lot of us, I think, forget to do this during a race, and we get so excited with everything that's going on in a race that we often just end up queuing up in that start line, and we've not really prepared ourselves well. So if you come to one of my classes, or if you do a hard session by yourself, you're probably going to do a thorough warm-up, and racing is absolutely no different. In fact, you want to do more of a warm-up. So what is a good warm-up for a hard session or a race? You want to be doing about 10 minutes easy jogging. I like to sort of accelerate it, so start very slow, then pick up that pace, so you're sort of pushing at a good pace by the end of the 10 minutes. So I do that jog, a little bit of a drink, then I do my dynamic stretches. So I'm doing some running drills, which might be about 10 different exercises where I'm moving dynamically, quite exaggerated movements which really get the body going. It's a form of stretching which you're doing with movement. Okay, once I've done that, set a stride. So 3 strides. I'm going to be going sort of a 50% of sprint pace, 70% of sprint pace, 90% of sprint pace. So basically, you're preparing the body to get ready for some fast running. And you always feel pretty good after that because you're moving along quickly. So those are the three components: the jog, the dynamic stretching, and the strides. Now for a 5K, 21K, 5, 10, 21K race, you definitely want to be doing like a couple of kilometers warm up. I know you might think, oh, that's going to tire me out, but it's more important to do it than not to do it. For a marathon, you don't need to do too much mileage. You do want to be saving energy, but some dynamic stretching, I think, is still important. Last tip on that: make sure you take a water bottle when you're doing all of those warm-ups. So that will probably take about 20 minutes if you're doing it thoroughly. So you have to time it well to get that done, to get your drink, probably go to the toilet, and then you get into the start line. But if you don't do a thorough warm-up, you're not going to perform as well as if you do. Okay, so that's the first tip, warming up. This second one I tell to all the runners that I coach. So I call it my 1 km check. So we all get tired very quickly, and when we tire, our running form inevitably changes. So if you think about a time when you've done a race, it doesn't really matter what distance, there'll always be some point in that race where you really feel like you want to stop, or you feel like, man, I can't even pick my legs up properly. And you know your running form is not as good as it was at the start of the race. And that's not a very nice feeling. And that will change for sure how you perform. There's very few runners in the world that can maintain the perfect running form over a long distance. So we all have to overcome that. So it's a good idea to have a little trigger, a mental trigger to think about that. So personally, what I do every time my watch gives me my 1 km split, I get a little beep and a vibration, and normally I'll sort of check my progress. I use that as a reminder. So I then think, okay, am I running on my toes like I was at the start? Am I light on my feet? Am I striding nicely? And I'm also thinking about the negatives. Am I not overstriding? Is my cadence too low? Do I need to pick it up? So just a little 1 km check is a good idea. And for me, the biggest way to overcome that feeling of fatigue is to focus on your cadence, your strides per minute. So when I notice that I'm tiring and I'm finding it hard to pick my legs up, I want to shorten my stride again by picking up the cadence. And actually, normally that tells your brain, okay, I'm feeling a bit better again, and it can kind of recover your running form quite well. So it sounds quite obvious, but it's something that I would encourage you to do. Practice it in your training, that little 1 km check. If you can keep your form more or less on track throughout a distance, then you're going to do much better than if you let it go and you tire. Okay, that's my 2 racing tips. And lastly, I've got 2 nutrition tips for you. So this is Adele's area of expertise, but I've got my own layman's knowledge. First one is recovery. Now, you probably don't know this, or you might not think this, but I'm a bit of an old man. I'm an uncle now. I'm 46. So I know I only look about 21, but I'm getting on in the years, so I need to look after my body, and recovery is a major one. I train pretty hard, doing a lot of sessions every week, and I can only do that if my body allows me to recover. So I've benefited a lot over the years from taking a recovery product, and I take that religiously after any hard session, and even after a sort of medium hard session. So it's a carbohydrate protein recovery drink. I like to add a lot of fruit in there, so bananas. I like to stick some beetroot juice in, make it a bit of a cocktail, and it genuinely tastes great. So after a hard session, I get that down me as quickly as I can, and it really, really works well. Personally, I use Hammer Recoverite. There's many different ones on the market, but a good quality one is worth getting. Don't just buy the cheapest one. It really, really makes a difference. If you think about training, the objective of training is to break your body down. So you're actually aiming to damage yourself in order that the body recovers and repairs. And when it does that, it comes back stronger. So essentially that's what you're doing over a training block. You're trying to destroy yourself so that you can come back stronger. So you definitely need to give your body a chance to do that. If you're not going to do it through a recovery product, you need to do it naturally through the food you're consuming. For sure, Adele's going to talk about that. So protein and carbs, important. Okay, so make sure you're recovering well. That's my first tip. And the second tip I've got for you, relates to what you have in your stomach when you run. And I'm sure there'll be questions on this for the Q&A. It took me so many years to get this right personally for my own running. I used to always eat before a race, and if my stomach was rumbling in the morning, I would feel the need to put something in there so that I'm not hungry. But now I do not do that. For me, running on an empty tank works very, very well. Now, I'm not talking about an endurance race here, but anything up to a couple of hours, I'm now very, very comfortable pushing extremely hard on an empty stomach. Your body has a lot of reserves. It has a lot of energy in there, even if you feel hungry. So if your stomach's rumbling, as soon as you start running, it forgets about it. And it's a good lesson, I think, to learn. So experiment with that. Might not work for everyone, but it definitely works. So basically, you do not want your body doing anything other than supplying oxygen to your muscles when you're doing a race. So if you're digesting food, you're taking away the efficiency of your body. Same as if you're running in a hot country and you have to cool your body. Your body is using resources away from where you want them in your muscles. So same goes for digestion. So play around with what works for you. I eat fairly heavy the night before. I make sure I get a lot of food in me, and then in the morning I feel good running on an empty stomach. So that is one that has worked for me and took me a long time to figure out. So there you go. That's my 6 tips. Hopefully at least a couple of those might be useful for you to try. If you've got any questions on those, I'm very happy to elaborate later during the Q&A. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to put in a little breaker, and then Adele is going to take you through her section.
Potatoes, real food, real performance. What are you eating?
Hey everyone, Adele here, dietitian and founder of Nutrition Track. Hope you're all keeping well and safe, and thank you so much for joining us today. So as Jeff mentioned previously, today we will talk a bit about the Malaysian diet, the issues with it, and tips on how to fuel for success. Okay, so let's kick things off. Let's start off with an overview of a typical Malaysian diet. So what does that look like? So maybe for breakfast, you're probably going to have something like that. Roti canai looks familiar. And then for lunch, it's probably going to be maybe nasi lemak. And then for dinner, something like a fried noodles or fried rice. And of course, that is not just it. That is probably not what we're just going to eat in a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We are probably also going to add in a lot of snacks in between our meals. Okay? Now, of course, this is not going to be for everyone, but most of what I've seen, especially in my clients as well. Okay? Now, the 2 biggest issues with this is basically overconsumption, and the foods consumed are low in nutrients, or tend to be lower in nutrients. And the 2 main reasons for this would be, one of it is our environment, okay? So where we have an easy access to food coupled with our bad habits around food, okay? So for example, eating when we are not hungry, okay? Now, just to give you some recent stats in Malaysia, in terms of overweight and obesity, we have crossed the 50% mark for overweight and obesity. Okay, now this means that more than half, or almost more than half of the Malaysian population, this is adults by the way, are overweight and obese. And this is very alarming because this can lead to many issues down the line, including things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, as well as things like stroke. Okay, now, and normally when people hear about this, when they hear, okay, we have this issue now, the first thing that pops up into people's mind would be, okay, I need to go on a diet. And normally, most of the time, the first thing that people tend to cut out is carbs. They would think that, okay, I need to cut out all these carbs if I want to lose fat. Okay, so they go from eating lots and lots of nasi to maybe hardly any or none at all. Okay, now the question is this even necessary? Now, in order to understand this, we need to take a few steps back. We need to look at how you gain fat in the first place. Okay, so basically, it all comes down to energy balance. So if you eat more than what you expend or what you use in terms of energy, you will store that as fat because you are not using it, you gain. And if you eat the same amount, you are going to maintain your weight because that's going to be the same. And if you eat if you eat less than what you expend or what you use, you are going to lose fat. Okay, so the one and only criteria that you need to meet here, if we're talking about fat loss, is a calorie deficit. Okay, this means that if you cut carbs, but you are not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. If you cut carbs, but if you're not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose fat. Okay, very important point to remember. When it comes to fat loss, energy balance still applies. It's not about the carbs, it's not about the sugar, it's not about the fat as well. Okay, so the good news is you do not need to cut carbs if one of your goals is fat loss. Okay, so what can you do then? Now, the next one you see is an example of how you can go about still eating your carbs, but also not going overboard with it. So instead of the second line, that cutting it out, what you can do is you can manage the portion. So the first one will be probably eating a lot every day. And then second one, you probably think, okay, now I need to lose fat, I need to cut out carbs. Then you go on zero, none at all. But what you can actually do is you can move on to the third layer, which is managing portion size overall. So instead of going too much and between too much and not at all, you can meet in the middle, okay, which is basically managing portion size every day, and you can definitely still eat your carbs also. Okay, I can tell you from experience and research that restriction is never the answer. It's not about saying no, because the more you say no, the more your brain wants it. Now, I'm sure you've probably personally experienced this as well. So for example, if you tell yourself that you cannot eat ice cream or chips or kueh, the more you want to eat it. And that can be counterproductive to your goals. So the key is to keep things flexible, allow yourself to eat all foods, but this does not mean that you just eat anything and everything. Food quality still matters, yeah? And keeping everything balanced as well. So making smart food choices and managing your overall portions. Now, this slide shows you a very simple but super handy guide that you can start off with. Now, I know that when it comes to nutrition and diet, it can be very, very overwhelming. There's so many things set out there, and I know a lot of my clients, they get very confused as well as to what to do. Now, if you don't want to think too much, literally, you can use this guide to start off. Okay. And so basically, this is the Suku Suku Separuh guide, which you fill half of your plate with veggies, a quarter with some protein, either chicken, fish, or beef, or any other protein that you like, tofu as well. And then another quarter of it of carbs. It could be rice, it could be noodles, it could be potatoes as well. And I can guarantee you, if you just follow this simple guide, you can see a lot of change. Now, a lot of people tend to focus in on the details, like what sort of vegetables, what sort of protein, what sort of carbs. Basically, opt for a wide variety. When it comes to the vegetables, I always tell people more than 2 colors if you can. If you want to take it up the notch, 3 colors in a meal. So anything between red, green, purple, yellow, orange, go for wide variety. And then if we're talking about protein, again, any kind of protein works as well. And if you're talking about carbs, again, wide variety, anything that you like, and according to the portion that you see on that slide. Okay, so you can 100% still eat your carbs and lose fat. We just need to manage the amount. Now, carbs are very, very important, especially if you are an active person, okay, as carbs are the main source of energy. So you heard Jeff, what he mentioned just now. For recovery, his carbs and protein is very important to him. And this is why, because it does help you perform and does help you recover as well. So if you don't consume enough, and especially if you're doing hard training or you're aiming for performance, I can tell you, you are not going to maximize your potential there. Okay, so yeah, so basically, if you don't consume enough, that can definitely affect your training and performance. Now, normally when we think of carbs, we tend to think of rice or bread or pasta, but we often forget about the humble potato. Okay, now in general, potatoes tend to get a pretty bad rap because normally when we think of potatoes, we think of packet chips or French fries. But in fact, the potato on its own is very rich in nutrients. Okay, so this is a simple slide to give you a quick overview of all the nutrients in a potato. So it's a source of energy and carbs. It has potassium, vitamin B6, fiber, vitamin C, and antioxidants as well. On its own, it also has no fat or sodium. And fun fact, potatoes have actually more potassium than a banana, which can be very, very beneficial when it comes to performance and sports as well. Okay, now a tip to how you want to get more fiber from your potato is to keep the skin on the potato, but of course make sure you clean it properly and you can consume the potato with the skin for some extra fiber. And also note that these nutrient values here apply to the US russet potato specifically because the research is done on this potato. Now there are heaps of different types of potatoes out there, but when it comes to the specific nutrients, and they will all vary in terms of the nutrients and also depends on where they're grown. So this is specifically for the US russet potato when we're talking about these specific nutrients here. Okay, so potatoes are good in general for general population and even for performance, but I also want to highlight how it can be a very great option for athletes. So why are potatoes a great option for athletes? So basically, potatoes, they are super versatile. There are so many ways to eat them. I think Jeff can also show you how to cook some potatoes. I'm sure he has eaten lots of potatoes in his life. And they're also very affordable and convenient. So you can easily find them in every supermarket. And they are also very quick to prepare, nutrient-rich, as we discussed, and satiating as well. So they keep you full and satisfied. So actually, yeah, potatoes on its own, they're actually very filling. And this can be helpful if, let's say, one of your goals is fat loss or weight management as well. Okay. So how much do you need in a day? How much carbs do you actually need in a day? So on average, if you are about 60 kilos and your activity level is light, meaning about one to 3 times a week, and you need about 2 to 3 grams of carbs per day. Does anybody want to guess how many potatoes that amounts to? Yeah, okay, so that would roughly come up to about 6 potatoes a day. Now, of course, this is if you don't eat any other carbs in a day. So if you only get your carbs from potatoes, if you're about 60 kilos light activity, this is about how much potatoes it amounts to, 6 a day. Okay, and if you are very active, you train several hours a day, you would definitely need a lot more. So if you are of a high activity level, endurance-based program, 1 to 3 hours daily, I think Jeff would fall into this category. You would probably need this many amount of potatoes. I think it's about 18 potatoes in a day. Again, this is taking into account that you don't eat any other carbs in a day. This is in terms of potatoes only. Okay. And there are really many, many ways for us to incorporate potatoes into our meals. You'll see on the next slide, these are just some of the some examples that my friend Janice and we made this for US potatoes 2 years ago. I won't go into detail of on the recipes. You can actually find some of them on my Nutrition Track Instagram page. But this is just to show you how you can really get creative with potatoes. There are so many dishes that you can make. This is one is actually made specifically for runners as well. So that's actually a potato-based smoothie, and then we have potato-based energy bar as well. And then some of the snacks and main meals which are freezer-friendly. So you can actually make a big batch, freeze it, and if you, let's say, for example, if you need a quick pre-workout snack or even a post-simple workout snack, you can easily grab it, microwave it, and consume it as well. So it's very, very easy and versatile. But personally, I like my potatoes plain and simple. I usually just roast them with some salt and pepper and herbs. I'll put it in the fridge, and then that can last me for, again, a few days as well. And whenever I need it, just take it out. And I actually like to eat them cold. So I don't even bother heating it up, just eat it cold. And it's just as delicious. So yeah, so basically, potatoes is something that we don't really think about when we talk about, especially when it comes to diet and things like that. So yeah, just something for you to add in to have more variety in your diet in terms of your carbs as well. So thank you. That is the end of my session.
Potatoes, real food, real performance. What are you eating?
Great, thanks, Adele. Thanks very much. We cut you off at the end there. We had enough talking about potatoes. And we like our little video clip so much. So 16 potatoes a day. I need to up my consumption, it looks like.
Yeah, you need to up your potato game.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Anyway, I'm Scottish, so I have indeed eaten a lot of potatoes over my life, but I do also like the rice here, I must admit. But yeah, potatoes can help you, and they're always in my shopping basket. Okay, we're going to go into Q&A. So I've tried to take a note of all the comments that I saw coming through there on Facebook just while Adele was talking. So we will answer some of those. But now is your chance if you want to type in anything. We'll try and get through as many as we can. So we'll keep our answers short and concise. No problem for me, but Adele, you might find that hard. So we'll keep it snappy. First question I saw: is nasi lemak good for a post-race? Over to you, Adele.
It depends on what race and how hard you ran as well. I would say okay. But make sure you get in enough protein on top of that as well. Okay.
I must admit, when I run with Sue's running group, they're always going for nasi lemak after their Sunday run. So I'm going to tell them it's maybe not the best thing. Okay, next question. And it's a similar sort of one. Is there any difference if I eat mashed potatoes or French fries?
Are you talking about store-bought? Okay, but in general, if you use, let's say, for example, if you use the russet potato and if you make mashed potato from it, and or if you make fries from it, you're technically speaking going to get the same nutrient values from it. But of course, it depends on what you add into it as well, so that you will get all the other excess of whatever you add into it. So yeah, in terms of nutrient values, yes, they'll be the same.
Okay, so what are the most nutritious ways to cook potatoes? 3 types.
The plain and simple one, just roast them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's like the simple ones as well. And let's say, for example, if you want French fries, for example, you can try air frying it, so you don't have to deep fry and put it into too much oil. So that's one of the other ways that you can make potatoes as well.
Okay. I've got a few other questions, not about potatoes, which is fine, doesn't have to be. This one came to me in advance of the group, and I like this question. What are 3 foods or drinks that you would recommend to eliminate from our daily diet? Put you on the spot here, Adele.
So if you listen to my talk just now, basically I'm not for the elimination or restriction approach, because every time, if it's like I said, it's psychological as well. Food, it does involve our behavior around it and our thoughts around it as well. So the more you tell yourself that you can't have it, literally the more you want it. I wouldn't say eliminate, but I would say it's probably best to cut down. In terms of drinks, it will be sugary, sweetened beverages. You can opt for more water, I would say. So that applies to everything like juice, sodas, smoothies as well, depending on what's inside, and especially commercial ones also. In terms of foods, I would say anything in the snacking category, I would say. Yeah, I think we just need to make smart food choices and how we're going to incorporate them into our day. And of course, bear in mind your ultimate goal as well. What do you actually want out of it?
Yeah. I think one thing I would add on to that is it's all about routine, same as running, really. You get into a routine of buying the same kind of unhealthy snacks, and you just need to break that routine. And if you don't have a can of Pringles in your house, you're not going to eat any Pringles. And when I go home to my parents, there's always Pringles coming out at like 5 o'clock, and I get stuck into them, and I don't really want them, but I do it because they're there. It's routine, I think, and habit, breaking those habits. But I think sugary drinks is very much an easy one to do, and we're often consuming sugar when we don't really know it's going to be there, or we don't really want it, especially during normal times when we're eating out a bit more in cafes and things. A teh tarik probably has more sugar than you need for a week. And, we maybe don't always know about that. Okay, next question. What is more important for a marathon? Carb loading or training? I'll let you answer it first, then I'll answer it.
Both. But I would say your training would definitely come first, because if you don't train and if you carb load, I'm sorry, you're probably not, it's not going to end well as well. So both components are actually very important, but if you're talking about performance, the training would come slightly above carb loading.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think sometimes, especially with a marathon, when you're talking about marathon, some of us use it as an excuse. Oh, I hit the wall. I didn't get my carb loading right. But actually, maybe you didn't train enough. And more often than not, in my experience, if you break down during a marathon, it's because your muscles are not ready, and you've not given your muscles the correct preparation, which is mileage based. It's not nutrition based, but both are important. Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions. This one's for you, Adele. Which is the best diet for weight loss?
Ooh, I love this one. So if we're talking about fat loss, there is actually no one diet that is superior compared to the other. And from experience, people don't actually need to go on diets per se. They just really need to correct their bad habits. Okay, so things like poor sleep, not having a regular eating schedule, like Jeff mentioned, eating when we're not hungry, and also just because food is there. So, or even eating when we are, for example, stressed or bored. And of course, not paying attention to food quality as well, in general, like your fruits and vegetables. All these elements are actually the root cause of your problem. Okay, so if you want to start, you need to start fixing this first instead of hopping on a diet per se.
Okay, and I've got one last question. I saw a couple of comments there. I haven't managed to scroll through them all. Some people saying that no, they need to eat before a workout. And that's absolutely right. There's no right or wrong answer. You do need to experiment with it. But someone's asking, do I need to eat before a workout? So from a nutrition perspective, what's your opinion, Adele?
I would say you need to take into account your personal preference and the nature and the goal of the workout. So for example, a high intensity session versus a recovery session. So if you're going to do a very demanding workout, I personally would highly recommend that you eat something. But if it's just like a recovery session, for example, doesn't really matter per se. But again, having said all of that, it really comes down to what you prefer as well. So I know people who perform better on empty, like Jeff, and it works really well for them. So if you really do want to eat something, I mean, like Jeff said, you really need to experiment. But a tip, if you do want to eat something, just keep it light, something small, maybe a banana, or maybe a potato, a small one, 1 hour, at least 1 hour before your workout. So don't go and eat something like half an hour before and then you go run. You're definitely not going to probably feel very good. So give it enough time. And the most important thing is really experiment with yourself and see how you feel and what works best for you. So personally, for me, I feel better if I eat something small. So I normally just eat a fruit, a banana, basically, before I work out.
Okay, good. Well, I see more questions coming in, but we're going to have to wrap it up. So we're going to give the lucky draw winners in a second. So for now, let me say cheerio to Adele. Thanks so much for your input, for your professional advice.
Thanks, Jeff.
We'll see you at the next session, I'm sure. Thanks, Adele.
Okay, see you.
Okay, breathe a sigh of relief. Adele's gone. Oh, she can still hear us. Okay, we've got 10 prizes to give away. Let's play the video one more time. Oh no, oh no.
Potatoes, real food, real performance. What are you eating?
Okay, I love that video. Okay, we're not going to mess about. We've pre-drawn. Thanks for everyone who's signed up for today. We've got 10 lucky winners. I'm not going to read the names because some of them look tricky to pronounce. So we will be in touch with you. We'll ask for your contact details and address, and we will organize a t-shirt, cap, and towel to be sent across to you ASAP. So thanks very much, guys. Okay, just a couple of last thank yous then. Potatoes USA, thanks for sponsoring this session. You can find them in most major supermarkets, and yeah, do look out for that. We'll be doing more sessions across the rest of this year on nutrition and running training. So thank you so much. Keep safe, everyone. Stay home. Let's beat this together. Hopefully we'll all be running and racing together in the near future. Thanks for tuning in. Please share it after if you want, or give a little like. Thank you, and see you next time.
Potatoes, real food, real performance. What are you eating?